Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Dyro here with another options and play video update. So volatility started to expand the last couple of days. It's good. You started to see some bigger moves in earnings. That's great. That's what we're looking for, right? Earlier in the week, a little bit tighter. Later in the week, a little bit wider. So hopefully, like that spills over into this coming week because we are going to be absolutely slammed with huge reports. Basically every single day of this coming week. So let's just get right into it. All right. Monday before the open, checkpoint, cybersecurity name. As you can see, definitely on the weaker side, below almost all of its moving averages. Pricing at about 675. Those are monthly options, so definitely been lagging. And honestly, it doesn't act great, or at least it hasn't acted great on earnings recently. I mean, it got run over in April. Hasn't really been able to bounce back much since then. So I'd say, uh, you know, if anything, maybe like a bearish trade just because the group hasn't been acting great. This stock hasn't had great earnings recently or great quarters recently. The action doesn't look great, so maybe something to the downside on that one. Spotify also Monday before the open, 775 or so, about what they're looking for here. Um, Last quarter the numbers were decent, but the reaction really wasn't great, and then you can see what it did over the last couple of months. Just really fell apart. So it's been a poor performer for a few months now. Looks kind of like a tough setup down here, just kind of flagging kind of like above the January, December low, but underneath support. So kind of in no man's land. Honestly, I haven't had a whole lot of success with this since it's come public. It's really not my favorite stock, so I'm thinking about just leaving it alone. But if you have a strong opinion, I mean, it's definitely one of the more volatile names expected on Monday, so maybe worth keeping an eye on. Also Monday, Walgreens. So 3 points is about what they're looking for this time around. Definitely kind of a question mark quarter for me because 2 quarters ago you had like this really huge move in April, right? And then last quarter it was kind of a dud. Really didn't do a whole lot. So they're priced in three. It still hasn't closed that gap. It's kind of perched right underneath that gap, a little bit tighter of like a pattern. Um, I feel like CVS has been working its way higher, and maybe Walgreens could play catch up if the numbers are good. But I mean, it seems like it could be like a decent area for like a volatility strategy because if it does pop into the gap or if it rolls over, I mean, the next key area is not down until like 50. So you got like interesting levels about $5 either way or more. So maybe something that sets up for like strangle or a straddle. After the close Monday, Akamai, 625 ish is what they're pricing in. Coming off a really nice quarter, actually back to back nice quarters. So April and then again in July. It's really been in like a tight flag up around 90. Strong trend. I guess like the issue is that the options are a little bit more expensive based off what it's moved the last couple quarters. So strong trend, expensive options, great price performance. That's usually like a recipe for like a void for me. Or if you're interested, I feel like bullish bias is the way to go, but maybe like a calendar spread or even like some sort of flies. Really gotta get that implied volatility down. Google. All right, so this is gonna be a big boy. Clearly, 57 points, give or take. It's about what they're looking for here. Definitely one of the big reports of the week. Also interesting too because it's kind of just bumping up. You can see bumping up into like this big area of resistance over the last couple of years. It hasn't quite filled the gap from the April miss, as you can see, right? So still got some room to fill that gap. And then if it's good and it does fill that gap, then it could be like a pent up breakout. So definitely more speculative. But it seems like it sets up pretty well for like a bullish strategy. So maybe some sort of spreads, like call spreads, just to get that overall debit down. But I think maybe more on the speculative bullish side on Google. Um, Beyond Meat, 17 points. It's priced in. Really started to crack. I mean, it's only had a couple up days in the last like 3 weeks. And to be honest, I'm really not sure that earnings are going to reverse that trend. Um, and I mean, like the thing you have to watch for now too is that you got the lockup coming. So it's like Very, very strong downtrend. I mean, I think people are probably expecting pretty good earnings because the last couple of quarters have been great. But the problem is that like it's it seems like all of like the enthusiasm starting to wane. The stock is starting to crack, and now you have like a looming expiration. So kind of a tough setup. And I'm thinking it might be better to wait this one out, see what happens after earnings, and then maybe jump in for a trade, especially if the implied volatility can drop a bit. And XPI. So chip stock, 7 points was priced in. Semi's definitely been more mixed, but this one kind of flies under the radar a bit, And I feel like it 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 could have room, right? It hasn't had like a really big move since like the merger officially got called off, and honestly, like it seems like if it's good and it can pop and get up through like the teens, right? Like the low, maybe like 13, 14 area, then it kind of opens it up for a move into like the 120s. A little bit more of aggressive of a move, especially because we're only pricing in 7. But, it is speculative, and I'm thinking like the way that, some of these chip stocks have been, it seems like they want to go higher. So if they can really like put together a decent number, maybe this gets into like the mid-teens and really starts to grind higher from there. All right, before the open Tuesday, Corning GLW. So $1.85 is what's priced in. Not a consistent mover in the sense that it has direction, but what you can see is that it's consistently a mover. So it's not consistent in one direction, but it's consistent in the sense that it's either up a lot or down a lot, and it's almost like a very, very consistent 3 to 4 points. You can see here, right? Here, here, then here. I mean, very, very consistent. It's priced in $1.85, tends to move about 3 and change. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Volatility strategy might be the way to go with that one. Grubhub. So this one of the more interesting setups. It's priced in 675 and it's extremely heavily shorted, under key long-term support, right? Um, the options kind of seem low just based off the historical moves, plus other signals like the short interest, maybe like the technicals, right? So it seems like it's got a pretty good recipe for a big move. Plus that short interest is really interesting. So maybe something out of the money, either side, looking just for like something in like the 10 to 12 point move range, which it has done in the past, versus the 675 it's pricing in. Kellogg. All right. 3.5 points was priced in. Those are monthly options. So coming off a nice quarter, you can see it had this big pop here. It's been hanging in. Hasn't really been able to extend off that move, but it's been hanging in. Still has like a really big gap unfilled from last year. So maybe if it's good and it gets up into like the mid to high 60s, and maybe it kind of keeps grinding. Probably wouldn't be expecting like the gap fill on the earnings print, but if it was good, maybe it can get up and keep going. So thinking maybe some sort of like bullish strategy on that. Mastercard 10.25. So Visa didn't do a whole lot on its actual earnings report. Mastercard obviously a very closely correlated name to that. 10.5 or 10.25. We'll see. We'll see if it can get another push. I don't know if it's going to have like a big move. I mean, 10.25 seems like a lot, especially because Visa didn't do a whole lot. So I don't know if there's going to be like a trade specifically for earnings on this, just because it doesn't seem like either Visa or Mastercard really want to take off and start running. Shopify. Okay, 31 points. It's about what they're looking for here. Options, I'll just be honest. Options are expensive, but it does move quite a bit on a day-to-day basis. But then software is still trying to stabilize and it hasn't really been rewarded. I mean, I feel like the chart looks more susceptible to the downside, but it's also a very, very, very tough name to play because it's kind of a battleground stock for bears and bulls. And options at 31 points, yes, it might move more than that, but that's also a lot versus like what it has moved on earnings in the past. I mean, it's the volatility has been kind of expanding on it, but those options are very high based off its average earnings reaction. So I'm thinking I'm probably just going to leave it alone. As much as I'm sure it'll probably be in play, I don't have a really clear idea what to do with it. After the close Tuesday, AMD. So 3.25. Options are on the high side for AMD from a pricing point of view. But the chart is interesting, you know. I mean, it's still hanging in the low 30s, and if it can get up through that 35, it could be a really significant pent-up breakout. That's kind of the whole thesis around this, is if it can get up through that 35 area. So maybe a speculative bullish play. Last quarter it got hit though, so coming off a quarter where it got hit a little bit harder. But I still kind of like that chart, and I really like the potential if we can get through 35. Yay! So when I scrolled out here, you can see how tight and coiled this thing's been. 675 is what's priced in. Really been a tough gaming stock. I feel like Activision's moved a little bit better. Very tight monthly range, 7-point move either way could really trigger a break of that range, but like I'm not sure how much to expect outside of like the 675 to 7 points. I mean, like it doesn't really tend to move much more than 10. So I mean, options really don't seem to leave a whole lot of room on it. I feel like if I played it, I'd have to either get risk down or take like a directional bet, just because I just don't feel like the options leave a lot of room on either side. Exact Sciences, kind of like a battleground name too. They're pricing at 9.5. It's been weak over the past 2 months, and it's well below where it was when that genomic deal was announced. Personally, I don't normally like to play stocks for earnings when they're in the process of a big M&A deal. It's just kind of like one of my rules, so I'm probably gonna leave this one alone. And then also Herbalife Tuesday, 3 points. What's priced in? Um, Actually, kind of interesting setup for this one. You can see just clearing this downtrend resistance and peer USNA, so U.S. Health Services, U.S. Yeah, USNA at decent results. Options to me kind of more in line with its recent average, but the stock does look like it could have like 5. It's priced in 3. Seems like it maybe could have like 5-ish. So some sort of like cheaper volatility strategy, maybe like a strangle or a straddle, something lower debit. It does seem like the options do leave a little bit of room on that one. All right, moving along. Wednesday before the open, Crocs 375. Those are monthly options though. I mean, the stock is just running and running and running at the earnings here, just up a ton into this print. It is a pretty consistent mover, and after the way it's run into this earnings release, I mean, I don't see why it couldn't move again. It really kind of has like an explosive look to it, but expectations are also very high. So you kind of have to like temper that a little bit. So maybe like some sort of like staggered position where it's like maybe 2 to 1 bullish to bearish, or something where like kind of give yourself some upside potential, but also if it does retrace, I mean it could be kind of steep just because of the run it's had. GE, 60 cents is what's priced in. Um, Might be worth talking about, but I don't know if it's worth trading. Really, it's been kind of lifeless for a few months, and it didn't do a whole lot last quarter when reported. The pricing's not too bad. To be honest, I really just don't have a strong opinion on it, so I don't think I'm going to do anything with it. And Hess, so I'm going to talk about Hess, but it's actually going to be a really big energy week. A ton of EMP names capped with Chevron and Exxon on Friday morning, which I'll talk to you a little bit later. But Hess is a little bit more interesting than most of the other ones. It's priced in at 3.5, and it's definitely a leader. You can see, I mean, clearly, I mean, it's close to its 52-week high. It's above all of its moving averages. It's been one of, if not the best names in the EMP space. Had a decent quarter. Had a decent quarter when it last reported back in July, and it seems like it could have like a pretty big pent up breakout if it can get through 70. I mean, just kind of like a big supply level, and if we can get through that, you're probably looking at like move like something up into like the mid 70s. So kind of like that one on the bull side. All right. After the close Wednesday, it's gonna be a busy night. So you have Apple first off, 11.25. So the big Kahuna here. Stock has been incredible. I don't know how else to describe it. Just unrelenting rally. It's really led the market, to be honest. I mean, just it's kind of hard for the market to pull back when you have Apple, the biggest stock, just kind of pushing and pushing and pushing every single day. It's been numerous upgrades and target raises, so expectations seem to be very, very, very high. They have had a couple good quarters in a row, though, but the run that's on kind of makes it tough to expect a huge amount of upside from here, especially 11 and a quarter. So I'm kind of torn with the setup. I'd love to see it pull back, maybe to like 240 into earnings, but I mean, if it's like this or even higher, I think I'm just leaving it alone. I just can't see the upside after the run it's been on, and I mean, I feel like after the last couple quarters, probably says the numbers are going to be decent, but I don't really want to bet against it. But I feel like it's hard to kind of like to think that it's going to keep going higher from here. So I'm just really torn with this setup. Let's see. 675 is what's priced in. Played this one a few quarters actually. This was like a go-to name for a while. It was pretty good bullish trade. It had a couple quarters where really like popped a lot. That pattern's broke, but it's actually still moving pretty consistently, which is a good sign too. So it has had a few quarters where it's moved 8 to 10, priced in 675. So it might not be a ton of room there, but there could be a little bit of room. So maybe some sort of like low debit strangle on this one. Facebook, and another big boy. So 12 points, what's priced in. Uh, I feel like it's a more interesting setup this quarter than it was last quarter, because last quarter it ran pretty aggressively into earnings and then it kind of sold off after the numbers were good. This time, a little bit different because it's just hanging out in the lower range. A lot of headlines on this, so that's probably why it's hanging out in this lower range. But I mean, if it is good, which it has been the last few quarters, if it is good and it gets up into like the 200, low 200 area, I mean, there's still that huge gap from last year. So I mean, there really could be nice upside, nice sustained upside too, if the numbers are good and you can get up through 200. So I'm thinking some sort of like bullish strategy, maybe even like further out of the money, because like I feel like if this does get into that gap, this could really crank. All right, Lyft is also Wednesday after the close. 4.5 points is what's priced in. Actually had a pretty good report in August, but then Uber like threw cold water on it, and both stocks have gotten absolutely destroyed. Um, they gave some upbeat guidance earlier this week, which this is why the stock popped right here. So of the two, Lyft and Uber, this looks more interesting, but it's still in a really aggressive downtrend. So being bullish in a stock that's in a really aggressive downtrend is tougher. Um, so as much as I think this could move, I think it's probably also one that I'm most likely going to avoid, just because it's hard being bullish on a stock that's in a very bearish downtrend, or like conversely, being bullish on a stock or being bearish on a stock that's in a very aggressive uptrend like Apple, right? Starbucks 375. These options look underpriced to me. I was going to say it. I mean, chart's beginning to roll over after a huge run. It's breaking through some critical support. 17 points, give or take, off the high from August, July. So 17 points off the high from July, breaking critical uptrend, and that quarter it moved 9 points. So it's pricing at 375. And I just think these options look underpriced. So I'm thinking some sort of volatility strategy, strangle or straddle in this. Twilio, also Wednesday after the close, 1175. So it's priced in. Big software report. Stock is just about at its low. You can see here. So it's low from like the recent move. The valuation isn't as stretched as some, and even though the sentiment still kind of stinks in software right now, I mean, this is one of the names that I've traded in the past, so I kind of like it a little bit better. Maybe a little bit more willing to take a shot on it. Um, I feel like any rebound would probably be more marginal though, and it would probably be longer. It'd probably take longer to develop and probably more marginal. So it would probably I'd probably have to do something like longer dated spreads, something probably closer to the money, or even like some sort of maybe calendars. I mean, like I just feel like it's not going to have like a huge move higher anytime soon. But I do think that, I mean, compared to some of the other stocks in the software space, this one is actually not that stretched from a valuation point of view. OLED. So this one could be kind of crazy. 20 and a half points is what's priced in. Typically volatile smartphone play, so you can see that it's way off its highs, like from earnings, or from this is from September. Earnings last quarter had like a huge reversal, but it's still way off its high from like a month and a half ago. Options are definitely expensive, but I also think that there's a chance this could see 20 to 30. I mean, it's averaged about 35, I believe, the last two quarters. So 20 and a half hit points is what's priced in. Off its high, has a history of some big moves. So, I mean, you know what the recipe for that is. So some sort of volatility strategy. And Western Digital also Wednesday. 475 is what's priced in. Semi suppliers had a great week. And now we're going to see if the memory names can follow suit. So both Western Digital and Seagate report this coming week, so that means that Micron should be in play. So I really like sympathy trades when they line up, and I think that that's how I'm going to approach this is with Micron options because you have Western Digital and Seagate. All right, Thursday before the open, the Biomed. So 26 points. Those are monthly options. 26 points is what they're expecting, though. Kind of an under the radar, big med tech mover. Absolutely crushed the last quarter. It's still off a lot. Hasn't really bounced much. It's typically good for a decent sized move, and you know I feel like the chart probably indicates it could see like 20 to 30. I just don't know if the options leave a lot of room because they're pricing at 26. So if it only moves 20 to 30, 26, I don't know if the risk to reward is really that interesting. But something I wanted to point out because it tends to move quite a bit when it reports. Estee Lauder, 13 points is what's priced in. Those are monthly options. Very, very, very consistent retail name. You can see beat and guide higher, beat and guide higher, beat and guide higher. Right at the bottom of its yearly uptrend. So been very consistent, very strong all year. So maybe look for like a repeat of what it did in August when it was down around this 100 days. Look for another like good print and pop. So look at some sort of like upside bullish strategy. Generac. So 775 is what's priced in. Those are monthly options as well. Definitely been a big winner recently because it's kind of a play on the California power outages. Just up a ton going into this quarter. And I guess the only issue I have with it is that it hasn't really been a big earnings mover in a while. If there is one quarter where that may change, it might be this one because of the move it's had, also because of all like these headlines. But it's a little bit more of like a wild card, just because it hasn't been like a real consistent mover. But that's definitely one that has the potential to be a big mover, even though like it hasn't in the past. Kraft Heinz. So two and a quarter is what's priced in here. I think this is one of the more interesting setups, even though I mean it's only a $28 stock and it's a consumer staple. But they finally reported after delaying their numbers back in August. Stock dropped to a 52-week low off that, was rebounded, but still hasn't closed the gap. It's got a ton of room higher. It's still got a lot of room lower, just about $4 just to get back down to where it was. So pricing in two and a quarter. And I mean, it's had some really big moves on earnings recently. I mean, last quarter it moved over 4. So I feel like the options are kind of priced on this one. And then last on Thursday before the open is Wayfair. So 16 points is what's priced in. It's been a very volatile retail name. February was a huge move, but then the moves have been like increasingly smaller since then. That's not really a great sign. So when you have volatility contracting over earnings, not great. I mean, sometimes it can mean, if it means that stock in the consolidation, that's one thing. But when like the stock is still moving and the earnings reactions keep getting smaller, that's not a great sign to me. So probably gonna leave it alone. Those options seem expensive. Okay, Thursday after the close, Arista. So 21 points was priced in here. Usually a consistent mover. Has moved materially more than 21 points every quarter this year. So I don't know why options are only priced in at 21 because it's had 3 moves that are well in excess of 21 points. very below the recent average. So, I don't have a opinion on the direction, but I mean, the volatility strategy seems the way to go on this. AYX, 14 points is what's priced in. Those are monthly options, though. I wish this one had weeklies because it seems like it could be a pretty volatile print, especially among the software stocks. But because they're monthly contracts, I just feel like the pricing's high. I just don't know. 14 seems like a lot for this. I'll see how the earlier in the week software numbers go. Maybe make a judgment call depending on where this stands at the time. But I mean, this is one I really wish there were some weeklies because I don't want to pay for all that extra time because I feel like it could be like a quick one-day move. Melly, Mercado Libre, 60 points, what's priced in. Definitely one of the biggest price-to moves of the week. And it's had some explosive moves this year. But it's been quiet for several months, which actually a pretty good combination, right? So huge moves on the last 3 quarters, so here, here, and here. Kind of like a quiet grind consolidation. So it's right at uptrend support. So there's 200-day. So it's going to be kind of a critical print. I'll say the options aren't cheap, but at the same time, it has had a couple moves close to 100 points. So, I mean, definitely seems like there's potential with this thing. Pinterest, 3.25 is what's priced in. This thing's been really heavy into lockup expiration. It had a nice quarter. So it really heavy into lockup here. Had a nice quarter back in August. Flirted with like a big breakout and then fell apart. Now it's like hanging back down the 25 chop range. So you got lockup, which is kind of like a wait. The option pricing really isn't too bad, but it also doesn't look very compelling technically. So I think I'm just going to wait this one out. Maybe see what they say, see where it opens the next day, and then maybe hop in for a quick trade. And Corvo. So another chip stock, 6 points was priced in. It seems like I've been waiting for Corvo to break 80 for years. I feel like every quarter I talk about 80 and it just doesn't go, but you can see what I mean. I mean, it just kind of keeps bumping up into it. It doesn't want to go, doesn't want to go. I mean, chip stocks, they've been kind of mixed, but I mean, if it does break above 80 to 82, I mean, this could be a significant move higher. I mean, this is like a 4 or 5 year resistance that it's pushing up into. So, thinking some sort of like speculative bullish strategy just in case. This is the quarter where finally it goes. All right, and then wrapping things up. Friday before the open, we have AbbVie pricing in 3 points. Still in the process of closing the Allergan deal, so similar to what I said with Exact Sciences earlier in the video. I mean, probably gonna leave it alone. If it does get hit though, I might look to skip it for a bullish swing trade because it's got like a good feel to it, and it's really powered higher to close the gap. And I think if there's like a quick dip, it might be interesting for like a longer term bullish swing, almost like what we did with like Bristol Myers. Baba, 8.5 points. It's priced in here. Definitely reporting this quarter when China tensions are much better, right? Because back in August it was not a good environment for that. August earnings, like I said, came at a kind of a bad time. So I feel like the chart looks decent above 180 if it can get there. Because if it can clear that level, I mean, it has plenty of room up into like the 190 area. But it's had a whole lot of supply here. And it really hasn't had like a clean earnings move in a while. It's been a lot of like kind of like mixed like reversals. So, I'd say maybe you could look at it as like a speculative play. Maybe something out of the money because if it does break above 180, maybe you could see like 15 to 16, or I guess on the downside, I mean you might be looking at something to like the move like 160. So maybe there's 15 to 16 either way. But it just hasn't really been like a clean mover the last couple quarters, so that's definitely more in the speculative camp to me. And Chevron and Exxon, I'm going to lump these two together. So Chevron is 3.25, and then Exxon is 2. So the biggest E&P names, I'd say Chevron looks better technically, but they both have work to do. Exxon looks like it could be, it's kind of in like a dangerous position actually, and if it isn't good, there could be a pretty substantial breakdown because you can see where it's hanging on the chart technically. Go back even further. So you can see what I mean by kind of a dangerous spot. I mean, a big area of support the last couple of years, but another $3, and this triggers like a 4 or 5 year breakdown. So really dangerous spot. So they're really going to have to deliver. Um, I think because it's such like a busy week for energy, XLE or XOP options are the way to go. Kind of gives you exposure to like a basket of the names versus just trying to like figure out which one you want to go with. So you can take a look at those. And then Seagate STX priced it in 4 points, but like I said before with Western Digital, probably going to do Micron options because you have because you have Western Digital and STX both reported in the same week, so Micron will probably move off of that. Whew, and that's it. So absolutely jam packed every single day. Big names. I mean, even Monday morning before the open, which is kind of unusual. We have a few big names, so it's going to start off with a bang. I didn't even talk about the Fed meeting. I'll do that in a video next week. Kind of set the stage, the expectations, what we're looking for with the Fed meeting coming up. So that's just another reason why this coming week should be just absolutely wild. So rest up, relax, get a game plan in place, and I'll talk to you all Monday. All right.